What is up? Episode 169 of Sports Card Nation. Hope everyone out there is doing good. Another Friday if you're listening to this on show release date. Let's see, what's new in my neighborhood? Well, I've switched over all my showcases. When I say showcases, the carrying cases that carry my show inventory to the shows. I had 6 other cases, if you will. I switched over to our great sponsor, Pastime Marketplace, to their cases, and I should have did it sooner. Rugged, airtight, foam insulation, waterproof, just look better, bigger. I went with the extra large variety. And this is not the first time I'm using Pastime Marketplace cases. I have some already that I use for my PC stuff, but this is just using these now to get my gear to the shows that I do. And glad I made the switch. Can't recommend these cases enough. You know, we have some sponsors, and every one of the sponsors I've utilized. In other words, I'm not just shilling for them. I believe in their products, use their products, and Pastime Marketplace is no different. You need some rugged, attractive, get the job done cases. They're your company, and I'm not just saying that. Even if they weren't a sponsor, I'd be saying the same thing. Also, you know, I've always talked about how the studio here is pretty small. And I had the wax that I have, my sealed wax stuff. I had on, the plastic shelving. It gets kind of heavy. The shelving sags. It takes, I'm in a tight quarter, so I went and got some metal shelving with wheels. And again, big difference there. So, you just upgrade things sort of as you go along. And, so now I can roll my wax stuff around, even though it's a small room. If I need to move it, I can kind of move it around on the wheels. I don't have a lot of places to go. It's pretty tight in here, but at least I have the ability to roll it out of the way or to another location. So that's catching you up with some of the personal stuff side of my hobby. Got a great guest today, Justin Brown, more known as JB, OldTownCards on Twitter. Straightforward shooter, smart guy, smart hobbyist, and very active on Twitter, and I find myself interacting with him there a lot. And I just thought, man, time to get this guy on the show. And he's a great guy. We're going to talk about all sorts of different hobby stuff today, and gives you his honest opinion, and most of ours do align. But he's one of those guys that tries to help everybody out and be informative, and glad he's on the show today. One other house cleaning thing, want to welcome our newest sponsor, Midwest Box Breaks. Great outfit. They do a lot of breaks, very pro hobby, and you're going to hear one of their new ads at the top of the show here very soon with a discount code. So pay attention for that to get save some money. I believe 10%, and happy to have him a part of the Sports Card Nation family. With that being said, let's not waste any more time here in the intro and get this thing started.
This is your pal Val from NASCAR Radio. Never forget, the hobby is the people.
Are you a new sports card collector or someone that's returning to the hobby? Maybe you're just looking for a friendly, trustworthy community to hang out with and enjoy collecting. Midwest Box Breaks has been bringing collectors together for almost 4 years with affordable breaks, helpful Twitter threads, and a Discord group packed with generous people who care about the hobby and other collectors. Check out the breaks at MidwestBoxBreaks.com. First-timers can use the coupon code MBB10 and save 10% on their first order. Your first break mail will also include a bonus card, so no one strikes out on their first break. Our goal is to bring you as much value as possible. We've even launched an NFT project dedicated to the hobby. Find us on Twitter at Midwest Box Break.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time. The show starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Are you ready? It's showtime.
All right, joining me now on the Sports Card Nation guest line, it's JB Old Town Cards from Twitter and YouTube. And one thing I love about this gentleman, which I like, which is refreshing in the hobby, he gives you he's a straight shooter, doesn't mince words. And, sometimes we don't have enough of that in the hobby. And I respect him for it. And a lot of times he's probably right. So, welcome, JB, to Sports Card Nation.
Yeah, John, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I know it's the old standby sort of boring podcast, YouTube question, but kind of like give, I'm sure you've done it before, but kind of how you got started in the hobby, kind of that timeline.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief, but basically like a lot of people started out as a kid. I was into sports cards a little bit, but more like my generation. I think I was like 7 or 8 years old when Pokemon came out. So that was big for me. I played the video games, collected Pokemon cards, and then sports cards as well. Had a hobby shop by my house, went up there. I mean, everything from Pokemon cards to sports cards to Pogs, whatever it may be. And then, like a lot of people, grew up and got into a variety of things, but actually playing sports, going to college, what have you. And then in 2018, a buddy of mine who started getting back into Bowman around like 2015, 2016 had mentioned cards a few times in like group chats where it's like fantasy football, fantasy hockey league. And he's like showing pictures of modern cards, like ultra modern cards, I guess. And it started to catch my eye because I collected a lot of cards as a kid. And so I started just asking him questions, what have you. And we're in a fantasy baseball league together. And the year that Acuna came up was where I just started because he was like so talked about. And I was like, this is a cool time to get in. There's this like, huge Braves prospect. Maybe I'll buy a box of cards, see if I can pull a Ronald Acuna. And that was update 2018. Well, it just so happens that there's this other player in that same product named Juan Soto. And so as I was Acuna chasing, I'm also pulling the base cards for the most part. I was opening like hangers from Walmart. I'm pulling these Sotos. And I'm actually at the time, I'm like disappointed because it's not what I was chasing. But I'm like, all right, cool. So like now I have all these Sotos, and Soto at this time is starting to really come on at the end of that season. He was a shorter time in his rookie year, which is why he's in so few products. But then because of it, I had a handful of this player who ended the year well. And I just said, I'm like getting into Twitter, figuring out the hobby, like lots of people who got back into it. And I learned the term PC, like things, I'm just like learning alongside like so many people who got back into the hobby. And I was like, oh, I need a PC. And so I've noticed that people, even though I was chasing Acuna, people PC their home teams. I'm wearing, Nats hat. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to PC Juan Soto. Well, lo and behold, he's like one of the best young players in baseball. So it worked out really well for me. And I went like from 0 to $1 billion by collecting. And so I went like super hard after Juan Soto. And so it kind of set me up pretty well. My buddy also who got me into it was into grading. And so, financially I set myself up well because I got into some things just right before that boom. So, it's given me some flexibility in my collecting as well. So, yeah, I mean, as a kid, like many people, and then came back in around, 2018 timeframe.
Yeah, it's I'm chuckling inside because, knowing you're a Nats fan and you're going after Acuna, you know what I mean? And I'm a Mets guy, so we talk about 3 teams in the division. But I get it. I mean, he's obviously one of those kind of transcendent players that come along not all too often. But like you said, you did all right with Soto as well. I mean, that's a debate in the hobby. It's a debate in baseball, like who's the best, young player in the league. I can throw Tatis Jr., maybe even Vladdy into the conversation, but it's about those 4 guys usually. And, it usually comes down to Soto and Acuna, although Tatis Jr. I mean, Guerrero had a great year last year too. So,
and this other guy named, Ohtani. The funny thing is in 2018 with the Nats, Soto wasn't the highest touted prospect.
Yeah.
It was actually Robles. Like Robles was the guy in the hobby that everyone was talking about. And so it was actually easy to get in on the Soto train because he was only an update where Robles had been, he was a Series 1 checklist guy. And so, I was just stacking up US 300s, which now have gone down a lot just because of the pop on the PSA 10s and 9s and whatever is
still great cards. Still great cards.
No doubt. So I'm just stacking them and and I had the inserts from that. That said, it was just such a fun set to collect. I think an update he had 6 or 7 cards. So it was a lot of fun. Like if you got a hanger, you were almost, maybe 1 out of every 2 hangers. Like a rookie debut or and at the time, when you're getting back into collecting those cards that, even were worth like $5 to $10 that pay for the box, you're you're not so jaded where you've pulled low numbered cards and stuff. You're just you see the guy and it's got the RC stamp and you're all fired up.
Well, we're going to talk about the RC stamp too. That's one of my questions on my list. But you mentioned Victor Robles, who, like you said, he was even touted higher than Soto early on. Being a Nats fan, I'll ask you this. For whatever reason, I have a lot of Robles stuff, and I'm not saying I went out and bought him. I just seem to be a Robles magnet when I open. I've got a decent sized stack. What's the prognosis on him? Can it still happen? How is I'll ask a fan of the team. They usually, especially if they're real, they usually can give you the straight scoop about a player. What's your assessment on him?
He's a guy it seems to be very much in his head. He does think in the field, he's phenomenal, Gold Glove level player. But you just see it when he has a bat in his hand, and then even when he's running the bases, he just seems lost out there. I think there's a lot of just a lot going on between the ears in terms of thinking too much, not playing. And, I hope he can turn it around because he's the best option that the Nats have in center. But after watching him, since the World Series, where I think that year he batted 240 or 260, something like that. It's been nowhere near that since. And there's really, they sent him down to AAA last year. There's nothing saying that he's going to turn it around unless, one of those situations where, a batter meets a friggin' batting coach who just has the magic words and the magic, hey, here's what you should be doing. But if you got Robles stuff, I wouldn't be sitting on it hoping for anything other than a miracle. I'm sorry. As a Nats fan,
that's what I like about you. You give the straight scoop when you're asked your opinion, and I admire and appreciate that. Well, you mentioned him. I got to ask you. I know this isn't a baseball show, believe it or not. We're a hobby show, but reports are Soto turned down reportedly 13 years for $350 million. Again, as a Nats fan, obviously that's your centerpiece. You don't necessarily want to lose him. What are your thoughts? Assuming that's all correct and true, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so for me, it didn't move my dial much. I think what people aren't thinking is that 3 years in sports, and even in life, is just an extremely long time. I understand what Scott Boras is doing. He's trying to put pressure on Soto's going to free agency, whatever. But a lot can happen in 3 years. You look at a guy like Francisco Lindor, you're a Mets fan. He had a very tough season last year. If that season had been the final year of his contract, let's say Soto, I don't think that would happen with him, but just anything can happen. And with $350 million on the line, being put down right now, I don't think that the Nats expected Soto to take it. But it's a very good starting point. And so with that amount of time, there's just a lot of time to negotiate. I don't know why the Nats would come out and say, with their first offer with 3 years to go, would come out and be like, here's $500 million. That wouldn't make sense either on the other side. Why would you start there? So I think it's a good faith first offer. Hey, we think you're worth, a lot of money. I think it's $27 million a year. I think that what gets him is somewhere around what Trout has at I think Trout's like 32.5 a year. I think 35 is the sweet spot, which puts him at like 450 million in total contract value at that 13 years. I think that gets it done. And I don't think that for us, it's ridiculous. But for them, I don't think that that's that crazy going up 6, 7, 8 million a year over that amount of time. So we'll see. I just, the people who are like, he turned it down, like he's going to free agency. I don't see why the Nats would put down a huge offer right away. I don't see why Boris would advise Soto to sign. But at the same time, eventually there's going to be a number put in front of Soto, and it's like, hey, man, either you're taking a huge risk here. Think about Acuna this year. I mean, if that happens to Soto in the last year of his deal, he goes from 13 years, 350 million or 450 million or whatever it is to, I don't know, a 3-year deal. Someone wants to see how his knee holds up. Can he still play in the outfield? Like, is he just a DH? There's just incredible risk there. And I think if the number's big enough, they're gonna say we don't really want to take that risk. And it's a lot different for Boris to want to take the risk, who has, I don't know how many custom clients he has, but lots and lots of money. Soto doesn't. I mean, Soto hasn't signed a deal.
It must be nice to make like 20% of these contracts without having to hit a fastball, right? But
if he gets hurt, Boris is fine. But Soto's the one who carries all that risk. And I imagine at some point his family's going to be like, hey, we like this Boris guy. He wants to get you like the money, but also like we could take care of like our entire hometown in the Dominican Republic for like years. And we'd be set and everyone would be set and our entire extended family, your kids and grandkids are all set for life. Is it worth that small amount for a huge risk? And that's kind of what, as a Nats fan, I'm banking on. I'm like, eventually someone's going to come to their senses and say the risk outweighs the reward when the money is this big. But maybe I'm wrong. And maybe, I watched it happen with Kirk Cousins. Dude signed 3 1-year deals for the franchise tag in football and walked, and it worked out great for him. He's been a mediocre quarterback, but he's made like $200 million. So
great point by you too. Mentioning, people forget about that. That's a starting point to 350. I mean, it's like an auction, right? If you're going to bid on something, you're going to bid low and then gradually go up, not the other way around. You can't go the other way. So that's what that is. And right away, like you said, that's how media is, and beat reporters too. The minute someone doesn't sign something, oh, he's out of here, he's even. We see that in other sports. And listen, he's been rumored. He likes the Mets. He maybe, and believe me, we'd love to have him, but I'm not.
Everyone's a future Met to you guys.
Yeah. But I'm not banking. You know what I mean? It's the first offer. It's the starting point. Like you said, I think you're exactly right. They'll negotiate from there when the window obviously opens back up. You mentioned Lindor. He had a terrible Mets debut year, and I'm glad we have him, but man, I hope it clicks back in here when we get baseball again. And you mentioned, these big dollar double-digit year contracts, they are a risky proposition. A lot can happen in 10 years' time between injuries, talent decline. We've seen that with contracts in the past that are that kind of money. Pujols deal, A-Rod deals, similar, where the teams are sort of kind of locked in when they didn't even want to be anymore, hard to get off the contract. And so, man, you got to be so sure when you're giving those kind of deals out that you're giving it to the right person and the right player. You never know. Even when you think you do, one play can change the complexion of that deal. So we'll see when we get baseball again and these two sides can get on the same page.
Yeah, fingers crossed, man.
Going to step aside for a real quick break, but we'll be right back with JB.
Pastime Marketplace has a line of graded card cases that are waterproof, airtight, dust-tight, and hardened to protect and organize your valuable collection. Each of our cases come with pre-cut and pre-formed foam, so you don't have to cut and tear the foam when you get your case. The pre-cut foam inserts are sized to hold PSA, Beckett, SGC, and CGS slabs, Store it all safely and securely with a case from Pastime Marketplace. Check them out at www.pastimemarketplace.com.
Sports Card Nation is back with more with JB. I just wish this sport, players, and it's both sides. I'm not going to pick one. Players and owners alike, like, learn from past mistakes. When you've had work stoppage in the past, it's hurt the game. And, here we are dealing with a pandemic. And, I know there's important points on both sides and they want to accomplish, but I heard one day they met for like 15 minutes, another day an hour. I've said this on the show before, like, get in a room, lock the door, order some food, stay in like a jury, stay in there 8 to 10 hours and get some stuff going. Even if you don't come to agreement that day, hash some stuff out, because to me, a 15-minute meeting just tells me that's not. I mean, that speaks volumes to how bad each side wants it, where they can only meet for 15 minutes. So these guys got to get in that room, and you got maybe have to give up something to get something, but I think the fans have always been supportive of both players and the owners and the organization. Get a deal done, if not for nothing but the fans of your sport that allow you to make that kind of money in the first place. So we'll see. Here the Mets. It figures, right? With the Mets get some big name free agents headlighted by Scherzer, and we might not even, we get some new toys, and we might not even get to play with them. So,
hey, I feel that, man. The Nats won the World Series, and then we had a 60-game season the next year, and fans couldn't go. We didn't get to see. I had tickets to opening day, and it got canceled. I didn't get to, I was going to be there to see, them for the first time since they won the World Series, and we didn't get to go see any of that. So I definitely feel you on being excited about a season and then it not happening. For the Nats this year, I don't to write home about, but we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, you never know. This division, they just beat up on each other so much and pretty much split. Like, it's really what you do outside your division that sort of wins the division. So it's going to be interesting. Even the year you won it, congratulations there. I didn't think you guys had the team to do it, but you proved me wrong. So, again, you don't know, right? You just when you think you do, you don't. So we'll see. And it's the same with the Mets. I feel good. I'm not going to claim, they're going to win the World Series. I feel they're in the mix. But, a lot of things can happen. Injuries, some bad luck, and who knows. But hopefully we get to watch some baseball, I guess, is the, like you said, cross your. But let's turn it back to the hobby. JB, you mentioned rookie cards, big debate this year, right? The Wander Franco, Bowman Best, Beckett said, hey, we're going to recognize it as the rookie card. Obviously 2022 Topps Flagship is out. That has an RC logo on it. That's selling for probably a lot more than it should be, honestly, as people, FOMO, fear of missing out. Bowman really when Bowman came back, and I'm not talking the 89 in condition of it, but more of the Bowman, the draft, and with the prospect cards, it really sort of muddied the waters to, hey, what's the rookie? Is it the first Bowman? And what it is. I like first Bowman in my own sort of mind. I consider it like the first card of a player. If that player winds up becoming a superstar in the mold of a Soto and Acuna we've already talked about, that first Bowman card is a nice card to have. I know it's, Bowman's not a short printed brand or Bowman draft or, whatever, line of Bowman is 50 to choose from. I left half of them out, but so I kind of cheat and I'll say, listen, the rookies are the first cards that come out after they make their debut, and the first cards have a significance to me. It's probably that stuff in between those two kind of points that aren't as special, at least in my book. Your thoughts on whether it's the Wander debate that kind of was the hot topic this past month or 2 months, and just the rookie card in general.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the stance I'm going to take is that very much Topps drops the ball just a lot on things. If we use the RC stamp, they just make it confusing. I made a post the other day about Randy Arozarena. I mean, Randy Arozarena was I think 3.5. He made his debut 3.5 months after Vlad Guerrero Jr. Vlad Guerrero Jr. made his first appearance in 2019 Series 2, and then Arozarena is the following year. He then 2 years later is getting a rookie cup on his card. I mean, the guy's been in the majors for 4 years. It seems like Topps does a lot of things, holds people back in sets, all in an effort to capitalize financially, which they are completely allowed to do. But the problem is that there's not precedent. They're just doing things like, okay, you mentioned that the player needs to make their debut, but they changed the game with Luis Robert on that because Luis Robert hadn't made a debut, but they needed a name to put in in 2019 Series 2. They needed someone in that product because if you opened that product, it is absolutely terrible. There's one player in that product. Everyone else is like guys down the roster who have made like an appearance as relief pitchers and who knows what. It's one of the worst releases since I've gotten back into the hobby that I've opened. And Luis Robert didn't qualify based on what we kind of like had as our precedent, which is like they make their debut and then Topps after their debut picks their set that they're going to go into. Then this Wander situation, looks like is just oversight on Topps' part. Like they didn't know what the rules are supposed to be. I don't think that they intended for that to be his rookie card. I think they've said that it's not. And I'm talking about the 2021 Bowman's Best. For me, the way I look at it and what I've kind of said is, look, I don't care. Not that I don't care about like the history and stuff. The people who are much more vocal on the history of the hobby and traditions and things like that are going to speak to that. I'm going to look at it from, what kind of public perception is on that card over time. I think that the vocalness of people fighting for that card will decline over time. That's my view. If you look at there was like a Mahomes rookie there. I think it's I don't know football, like high end football and basketball as much as I know baseball, but like I know that there's a very high end football and basketball product that doesn't even though it's the rookie year, it doesn't stamp, and it's just escaping my mind right now. It doesn't stamp the RC logo, and it goes for significantly less than other cards like National Treasures or whatever that do have the RC logo on it. You'll see a lower numbered Mahomes recently went for like a tenth of the price of a higher numbered Mahomes that had the RC. So like things like that just matter these days to collectors, whether you agree with it or not. So for me, if I was putting my money in Wander, which I'm not, just because I did the collect everybody thing and I've really brought my collecting back more into PC stuff and DC players and things like that, just because I was getting spread way too all over the place. So I'm not saying I don't believe in Wander or anything, but if I was putting my money into Wander, I'd probably be saving for like either 2022 Topps Chrome, or I'd be looking at his Bowman first and things like that. My money would not be going to what it seems like just a quality control problem from Topps that some people that they may be right about. I don't know. Beckett and lots of people on Twitter and whatever agree. I don't know. I think, the money is going to tell the story in the end of, do those cards continue to rise? They've done well to this point. I think the base still sells for like $20, $25 or something, which is more than the flagship. But I mean, the flagship base is like bazillion copies on Earth.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that's on my list. That's what actually my next point. But yeah, it's confusing, like you said. I think when people ask me, JB, I just say, listen, if you like the card, collect the card. It's still an early card. Even with a Bowman first, it's their first card. So if that's if you're in, I kind of not. They're not the same, obviously. But when you look at comic books, right? first appearances. It's not even in that character's own comic. Sometimes they appear in another one, then they get their own comic book, their own show. So and those first appearance comic books are worth, if that becomes a popular character or show, those first appearance comic books are worth, a lot of money. I kind of look at that too with, first Bowman cards do hold a value if that player performs well. We get into the regular mainstream Topps and all the mainstream brands. I guess you consider them. I'm going back to what I already said. I guess I look at it like almost two sets of rookies, right? The first card is to hit the market of that player, and then the first cards after they've been up in the league and mainstream. It's that stuff in between that doesn't knock my socks off. But again, to each their own, right? I guess at the end of the day, when there's no definitive answer, like you said, and another good point by you. So we have rules, but they sort of like get rewritten by the people making the product. And so if we don't have, it's not like the Constitution, right? Where you can point to each amendment and say, here's how it reads, and Supreme Court tries to rule by that when they make judgment. We don't have that on the hobby side of the house. So
seems like Topps just does what they want to do when they want to do it, and we kind of pivot and try and figure it out.
Yep, and a lot of it, you said it. Let's be real, right? It's financial based decision. If you think it isn't, you're probably fooling yourself. There, I've done this long enough to know there's financial and there's usually a method to the madness. And so I guess it's at the end of the day, right? A card's worth what someone's willing to pay for, and the market's really going to really answer probably that question for all of us, whether we might not agree with it, but I guess the proof will be in that pudding.
All right, time to take another quick break, but we'll be right back after that.
The Sports Card Shop is your small-town local card shop with a global reach. Located in New Buffalo, Michigan, the shop is one of the most accessible in the Midwest. In addition to being an authorized Panini direct dealer, the Sports Card Shop carries all major trading card brands, including Topps, Upper Deck, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and more. With all that new wax, 500,000 singles, and showcases full of graded cards, you're sure to find something great for your collection, whether you're just starting out or a seasoned collector. The Sports Card Shop is your one-stop shop. So call us, come see us, or visit us on the web and social media. Our phone number is 269-469-0140. Website is thesportscardshop@moco.com. The Sports Card Shop is part of the Moco Retail Group, connecting sports, the hobby, and people around the world.
We are back with more from JB.
We're talking about Flagship. You posted something on your social media based on the golds. You figured out the production, and you came up with that the 2022 Topps Flagship is 7 times what was printed in 2019, and it wasn't short printed in 2019. So the moral of that story is there's going to be a lot of this product. Like you said, these wanders that are going for $20-$25, they're not going to be hard to find if you really want to find them. Is this good or bad? Like, there's some people, JB, and I kind of can make an argument for both sides of this coin. And some people can say, well, at least we can get some stuff and find some stuff and have a flagship brand available to us, where before you'd go into retail and the shelves would be bare. So for that, I get it. Other people will say, well, flagship's not meant to be a short printed product anyway, or a limited product. It is what it is. It's meant to be opened, a lot of it. And then there's others that will say, hey, this is watering down the market way too much. Maybe you get some of the environmental people say that's a lot of trees that just
No
died
doubt.
for 2022 Topps. But all joking aside, you got both sides of the aisle. Kind of where do you fall? I'm somewhere in the middle. I know it's kind of wishy-washy, but I guess it depends on the day. I don't really like things that are always mass produced, but I also don't like not being able to get stuff. And I guess I'm at least on this topic, I'm sort of I want my cake and eat it too kind of guy. But kind of your thoughts on this sort of production level with 2022 Topps Flagship?
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of the opposite because now they've printed so much that I won't buy it. I was always like a personal case breaker for Flagship since I started in 2018, got hooked in 2018, bought my first case 2019 Series 2, and then kind of had that ritual of like 1 to 2 cases for myself of Topps Flagship. I loved it. It's what brought me back into the hobby. I enjoyed opening, and now I don't open it. I don't mind. It's fine. They can put it on every shelf all over the world and have millions and millions of cards in there, and there's going to be a million Wander Franco cards. I just won't buy that wax because financially it just doesn't make sense. And if I'm going to go and just flush money down the toilet, I'll find other things to go do it with. I just opened a case instead of a Series 1 Flagship case. I just opened a case of Star Wars Signature Series, which was a lot more fun because I pulled a bunch of crazy cards that I've never pulled before. So for me, I kind of just follow the trends and make my decisions based on what I see. And for me, what it became was I just am not going to touch this anymore because it's not for me, because I just think that it's a losing endeavor. If it's the same price as what I was doing back in 2019, and my chases in 2019 were definitely the golds. Those were, and that's what I collected for a while, were the gold numbered out of that year. So out of 2019, out of 22 in 2022. But my odds of pulling a Wander Franco versus a Tatis are 7 times worse for the same price of a box. I can't look. Inflation is not great, but it's not that bad. So I can't bring myself to pay the same price for something that is 7 times harder to get. So for me, I've just Shark Tank, and for that reason, I'm out. I just and if I want to buy singles of a Soto short print or super short print or whatever it may be, I'll do that. I'll buy them on eBay. But you're not going to find me ripping that product. It's just a losing endeavor. And just Topps, if that's what you want to do, you want to print stuff to the moon, then you just, you lost me, but maybe you gained some kids. So I don't know. We'll see how it shakes out is kind of the approach that I take.
Yeah. My approach, I was normally under normal conditions. I'm a guy who will buy 1 to 5 boxes somewhere in between of the Flagship every year. Open them up. Kind of 2022 for me is going to be, if I go to Walmart, not for cards. I mean, I'm just at Walmart shopping in general. I'm going to go and grab some, they got the 2-pack blister packs. Like today I went to Walmart and I bought 2 of the blister packs. So in a sense, 4 packs of cards packs. So, wound up that's going to be sort of my approach with Flagship. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm in Walmart for not cards, and I'm going to throw them in my cart and grab a couple packs. And it's almost like buying a couple lottery tickets.
No
when
doubt.
You go to the convenience
and I very
store,
well
right?
may do the same. I may do the same thing. But look, you were a 1 to 5. I assume you're saying hobby boxes, maybe it's blasters. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But you went from that and you did the same thing, which is you went down. So Topps is losing out on the people who have the financial means to spend a lot of money with them. To me, that seems like a bad decision. I'm not running their books. Maybe they're killing it with kids and other people are opening these things or breakers or something. But from my standpoint, I'm looking at 2 guys who love opening cards, who do it all the time. And both of us are saying they're printing more and we're opening less. The supply and demand doesn't make the economics of that don't seem to make sense.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Topps. I don't know this. Someone told me this from Topps. My guess is they're reacting to kind of what we saw the last couple of years. Like, hey, I can't get enough stuff. Shelves are bare. Distributors are jacking prices up, holding product back. I think it's their reaction. Again, I could be wrong. That's just my speculation. I think that's Topps / Fanatics, even though I don't think Fanatics has a hand in it just yet. I think that's at least Topps reaction. Those folks that are like, hey, I can't find this stuff. I want to open it, but it's gone. I think that's the reaction. But, when you do that, right, like you just said, as consumers, we have to make, decisions on where our money goes. And so I'm going to open some, but it's just going to be here and there. Pick my spots. I'm not going to go nuts. I'll use like the lottery ticket kind of analogy. You go to the convenience store to grab some milk and a bottle of ketchup, and you go up at the counter and you're like, you know what? Give me 2 of the win for life too, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of my approach with probably the flagship this year. I may wind up opening a box or 2 boxes just by packing it out like piece by piece type of. I'm you know what I mean. I'm not ordering hobby boxes,
pre-order, like excited for release day. And the one thing I'll say, John, in my opinion, I wish that they would. I'm totally for them putting products on shelves. I guess I just kind of wish that they would have done it with like opening day or like Gypsy Queen or like something else. Like, and I get, you actually said earlier, flagship should be available. So maybe I'm just being selfish. I don't know. For me, I do wish, because it's something that I really enjoyed, and I just feel like it's not the juices to squeeze anymore. But yeah, I wish couldn't they have just mass produced opening day? There'd be plenty of opening day for kids and everybody.
Yeah, well, who knows? We'll see when
that probably will too. Yeah,
comes out. And we're gonna, for once Fanatics gets involved too, we're gonna see some changes. What those are, we'll have to wait and see. We might get more direct. Maybe they do watch what they produce, and it becomes more direct to consumer. Everyone can order 2 boxes. Who knows? I'm just throwing spaghetti at the wall and kind of sticks. But it's gonna be different with Fanatics pulling the strings. How different we'll have to. Someone asked me, and I get that question too. A lot since Fanatics acquired Topps. Like, what do you think? What do you think? I'm like, I don't know, but the only thing I'll say is this much: they paid a lot of money for those licenses. They're a business; they're going to want to make their money back, and that's. I'm not picking. I'm not criticizing for that. That's just economics 101. When you're a business and whatever your overhead is, you got to match that and go beyond that to be profitable. So
I think they've already spent like $12 billion. So, I mean, they're starting out in a pretty significant hole. Yeah.
So that's where I'm a little leery as to where production will come in. I don't know anything. I don't have any, any insider trading kind of information. It's just when you do the math, right? What something costs. And to make that money back, you got to make product, and so we'll see. And but if you look at 2022 flagship as sort of that first servo, that might be an indication of where we're heading. But again, we'll let stuff kind of happen before we kind of mail it. I don't want to say mail it in, but predict. I mean, all we can do is kind of guesstimate and speculate. It'll be up to them to either prove us right or prove us wrong, I guess.
Going to take a quick bathroom break, but we'll be right back with JB after that.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
Let's return to the interview with JB.
And one thing I want to say is, like, for me at least, I'm not of the mindset, no matter what, really, that I'm going to stop doing this, right? So, like, I think it's all just about picking and choosing your spots. That's why when you ask me about flagship, it's like, look, I've changed what I'm buying. I buy a lot less wax these days, and I buy all sorts of other stuff. I bought I've really leveled up my Soto collection. Behind me, maybe you can see, maybe you can't. Like, I got a Fleer 86 Jordan, like it's PSA 6, but I put a lot of, I sold a lot on Twitter and made a lot of sales, and I bought that instead of buying, 2 cases of Topps Chrome. which is like a complete gamble. So like there's always ways to pick and choose to collect. And you just have to be smart, first off to follow trends and stuff, and second to make yourself not go broke. So, if you do those two things, it'll always be fun.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're not, like you said, well said. I applaud you. We're not leaving the hobby. We might not buy as much of this product as we traditionally do. We're gonna buy. We're staying in the hobby. Our just money's gonna go to different spots, different things.
3 years ago,
and nothing wrong with that.
3 years ago, Flagship outsold Topps Flagship outsold Topps Chrome for base PSA 10 cards. So like things change, and you have to just adapt to that. I remember seeing that happen. And for me, as a guy who collected a lot of Flagship, I wasn't exactly thrilled about it. But look, maybe this year I buy, some Chrome and Chase Wander. And a lot of times it's the Series 1, Series 2 rookies that are in Chrome. And we'll see who comes out in Series 2. Could be, a really fun year of collecting Chrome. So you just kind of always just looking around at what's coming out.
Yeah. And sometimes flying by I always tell people that sometimes flying by the seat of your pants without necessarily a dyed-in-wool kind of game plan sometimes has the best results, and we'll just have to see what happens. But yeah, we're like you said, that's the thing. Whenever when someone says, "Oh, I'm not supporting that," or "I'm not buying that," everyone, there's some people say, "Oh, you're not a true hobbyist," or "No, I'm still an hobbyist. I'm just don't spend my money for me. I'm just gonna spend it on something else that I want to spend it on," and nothing wrong with that. We make those decisions in everyday life. So what's the big deal when you make them on the hobby side? I want to go into content creation. You do a show in your own right. Had a couple big guests on in the last year, and Gary Vee and Phil Hughes. Phil Hughes, former Yankee hurler, and Gary Vee, entrepreneur extraordinaire, influencer. They're truth be told, I think you'll agree with this too. They're both hobby influencers in their own right. Phil's does pools, and Gary Vee talks about cards every so often, and not shy to talk about what he's doing. You interviewed him. Kind of talk about that. What did you think? Getting to interview him on that sort of level. I've talked to Gary Vee off the air, but you did that obviously on there. What was that like?
Yeah, for sure. So, it was nerve-wracking. First off, Gary's got 2 million followers on Twitter, millions of followers on other platforms as well, and a big voice. And also he handles himself pretty well in an interview. This was pre-NFTs. This was in like 2019, 2020, right when the boom was really taking off for sports cards. And like I mentioned, I was still relatively new getting back into this hobby. And some things for me just were like kind of crazy. Like it was crazy to me that Gary Vee could mention a player and overnight that player's cards would take off. And there were lots of people who the terminology within NFTs is used all the time now, pump and dump. And, it's been stocks and trading cards and whatever. And so I was pretty vocal about how I was just like, that made me nervous as a collector and it wasn't necessarily Gary or Phil, or it could be anybody. They just happened to be most vocal and most listened to names. The fact that they could mention something and that would make the cards go up more than players playing, which is what got me into sports. I liked the idea of being able to invest. And I don't mean that in a way about invest or whatever. I'm not talking about that. But the idea that I could put my money into a player that I believe in, like a Wood or a Ronald. And based on how they played, that money would then increase or decrease. That was fun for me. That like kind of is what sucked me into the gambling aspect. It's a bit of whatever. And so then I started seeing this and it was like, I don't know, it made me uncomfortable. And I started saying that. And I think a lot of other people felt the same way. And I had no idea when I was saying that. I was a much smaller account at that time, like 2,000 followers. I had no idea that those tweets would take off and Gary would see him and he start DMing me. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I was literally walking my dog. I had some headphones in. I'm talking to my camera, just like giving my thoughts on this whole thing very similarly to how I'm doing now. like, hey, this kind of seems crazy that like Phil can mention Castanera and like without even playing a game, Castanera's like cards doubled overnight, his sapphires, because Phil likes sapphire. Like, that's crazy to me. And then I'm like getting hit up by those two people like giving their opinion. And at that point, I was doing a show just opening cards, and I just asked Gary, like, he's DMing me about like basically trying to which I have no idea why he cared what I thought. But he's like trying to tell me like, dude, like I'm just like a good guy who likes collecting cards. And I happen to talk about them and they happen to go up. Like, and I'm not selling them and like trying to pump them so I can make money. Like, Gary, if you look up how much he's worth like $250 million. Yeah. Like, I don't think he needs a Ronald Acuna base to go from 220 to 300. I don't think it's going to have a big impact on him. But so what I said to him, I was like, look, man, cool. Then let's do this. I'm going to ask you all the hard questions that like people in the hobby have, like that we hobbyists talk about you. And I'll ask you these questions. You just answer however you see fit. And that's what made me the most nervous about the interview, is because like I was a little bit scared to be like, hey, Gary, I'm going to like ask you hard questions, which like I probably shouldn't even be asking hard questions, but I did. I prepped. I spent a lot of time like coming up with my question. And I'm pretty proud of that interview. And he handled himself really well. Yeah. I think I handled myself well, not letting hit like when he did say some things that contradicted each other. He tried to say he didn't say something, and I was like, I don't know, man. Like, here's a tweet. Like, you did say that. He's like, oh, good point. And so like, and then there was just some mutual respect built there. I thought, I believe him. I don't think you listen to the interview. I just feel like you can tell when someone's lying. It didn't sound to me like he was, trying to sell ice to Eskimos kind of situation.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I think social media influencers sometimes, I guess they're an easy target is what I'm trying to say. It's the old, I always use the analogy, right? Blame the gun or blame the person firing the weapon, right? Gary Vee could tell 1 million people to jump off a bridge. Obviously, he's not going to do that. I'm just, hypothetically. If someone does it, like, to me, that's more on them than on, he shouldn't say that and be criticized. Maybe not the greatest segue or analogy, but, at the end of the day, we kind of make our own economic decisions, turning it back to, what cards are purchased. Maybe the problem's more that the people who just listen to what he says and don't do their own research, and Phil too, or whoever else. They're not the only two either, to be fair, So I think my problem, I don't even want to say problem, but, if I'm painting blame, some of it's got a good percentage actually has to go on the people who don't do their own research and just spend their money based on what social media hobbyists say in general. And I'll just say hobbies because I'm sure I've said something on the show and at least one person's probably heard it and done something based on it. It's my opinion, right? But whether it's your show or this show, right, we should be able to give our opinions. Hey, this guy's playing very well, he looks good. That guy struggling, he's sent down. That's going to open up a starting role for a player. And I think long term, he's the guy. Why shouldn't I think we should be able to talk about those things? And first and foremost, like you said, as sports fans, right? We kind of got into this, based on performance of the players. So I guess where I'm going with this, it doesn't bother me when they talk about that stuff. I guess where I might draw the line is if they really key on like one specific card, which is odd that they're always talking about one card, and especially
and that was
non-vintage.
That was the thing. That was the big thing that I talked to Gary about, and he actually said, he's like, I'm not going to do that again, because I realized it probably wasn't the best thing. He said that the Acuna US 250, which was his update card, he tweeted out, "Is it going to hit 300?" That card has no business $100. He had his first rookie card in Series 2. He had rookie cards all through that year. I think that card goes for like 120 in a PSA 10 right now. And sure enough, Gary said, "Is it going to get to 300?" And you know what? It did get to 300. And he didn't buy it. There are a bunch of people who listened to him and bought it. But I agree with you in the fact, hey, look, he can say what he wants to say. I didn't go buy it for 300 because I knew it was bad. That's like going to be the peak of the freaking market. Like, because someone's saying, someone very famous in our hobby is saying it. And, I think, like you said, man, like those people made their bed. They're going to have to live with it. Try to make your own decisions.
We're going to step aside for a real quick minute, but we'll be right back after that. We've returned with more with JB.
I think it's a little 50. I think a lot of people want to put 100% on the media influences, that it's 100% their fault. I think it's 50-50. I think they should think about what they say before they say it, but it's America. They should also be able to say what they want to say or give their.
And the sad thing, John, it feels like we, at this time, Gary came into sports cards and he got a lot of heat. I was someone who, was critical, and there are people who are much more antagonistic and negative and just flat out mean. And you know what? Gary doesn't really talk about sports cards anymore. I'm not saying it's because of us or whatever, the hobby. He's into NFTs. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I don't think it's helped that we chase away people with loud with megaphones who can. And that was something I learned, is like, hey, maybe it's okay to embrace these people first and see what they're all about. And that's why I really enjoyed having that conversation with him and with Phil, and getting to see it through their lens was really eye-opening. And, I think we're all in a better place with more people who are more visible and just enjoying the hobby like we do.
Yeah, well said. There's a million podcasts, a million episodes of all sorts of people, men and women, giving their opinion on things. At the end of the day, right, those of us that listen to them or watch them, it's our decisions whether we take that advice or don't take that advice. And I think some of the blame's got to go into the right spots. I think sometimes they're just these big celebrities and famous people. They're easy targets. I think you'll agree. I think people take shots at them when it gets, like you said, personal, try to get clout for themselves rather than this, really caring about the issue. It's more about, hey, I just called Gary Vee this and he responded to me type of deal. And rather than it be an issue, a sincere attempt to have a discussion on a serious topic, and that's where we're at, and that's not going away. That's how it goes. But I did watch both of those, and well done. Not to tell you that, but I will. And like you said, I always said, even with this show, I've had some controversial folks on. I'm going to ask you questions. I got to ask you, because if I don't, people listen to the show will grill me over the coals. Like, how did you have so-and-so on and not talk about the gorilla in the, like, shame on you, John. Like, say how you're honest and you care, but then you didn't do that. So, I've had people not, I'm not going to mention them, but I've had people not come on the show because they don't want to answer those questions. But that's the trade-off, right? I'm not going to have them on and not talk about it and, kind of, hate to say, sort of sell out. So, I watched both of those, and kudos to the great job, and it didn't skirt anything like sometimes you see on other shows, if I may, without mentioning. So, again, you don't need me to pat you on the back, but I will, because that's not as easy as people think either. Like you said, you were sort of kind of nervous and revved up, adrenaline type stuff. But that's good too, because what's that show? I always say, you don't get a little nervous or butterflies before, whether it's the game if you're an athlete or an interview if you're a content creator. It's because you're passionate and you care. You want to do well, and so I think that's par for the course. But
and John, one thing I just want to say is, I think the reason that those two people took time out to speak to me, even though I was rather insignificant then, and comparatively now, I do okay on Twitter, but I'm not like any big time anything. But they took time out to speak to me because I always, in my criticism, was respectful. When I spoke to them. So, like, did I always say or ask them questions both on Twitter and in the interview that they love to answer? No. But I was always respectful of my delivery. I never name called anybody. Always started with questions before I kind of gave my opinion when I spoke to them. And, it lent to being able to establish a relationship with these folks and just have good, productive conversation. I do wish, and I know anytime you talk about Twitter's a cesspool, and that's just a go-to line. But I think if everybody just took a minute to just be a little bit more respectful, you can disagree with people without being a jackass. And I think there's a good balance there. And I think that's a good example of it, is that this guy with millions of followers was willing to take 45. We talked at 7 p.m. on a Friday. I have to imagine that Gary Vee had better things to do than to talk to me about, is he pumping sports cards at 7 o'clock on a Friday? But he was like, this guy's he's always been kind of up my ass a little bit, but he's been respectful of it. And so I'm going to give him the time of day. I just think that's something that I wish more people would do. I'm no saint. And I got to check myself sometimes.
Yeah, we're all human. We're all human.
Yeah.
Well, you did the 2 Ps, which is something I try to do. You kept it professional, and you didn't make it personal. You didn't make it personal, and you kept it professional. I'm sure both of those gentlemen saw that in the private conversation, and they knew you were coming from a place, hey, I care about this hobby. This is concern. This isn't me just trying to pick on you because of who you are and make a name for myself. And there's plenty of that, and they can see through that. And I think they saw that wasn't you, and hence why you got to do those interviews. And again, in doing them, you kept the 2 Ps. I like to say, you kept it professional. Yes, tough question, but you didn't make it personal. You stuck to the issues. Some people can't do that. Some people get 1 of the 2. Some people get 0 out of the 2, right? But you went 2 for 2, and I think it speaks volumes about who you are and why those gentlemen spoke to you like that. And I think that's awesome. So kind of winding down here, I'll give you the last word, JB, where people can find that. Speaking of those 2 interviews, can find those 2 and everything else on your YouTube channel, your Twitter handle. Take your time. Anything you want to put out there and draw people. Now's your.
Yeah, the YouTube channel has pretty much gone by the wayside. I am a content creator by profession, and it's not in the sports card hobby at all. And so I got tired, man. I retired my channel after the Gary Vee and Phil Hughes back-to-back interviews. You can find it.
Well,
it's called.
Go ahead. I was gonna say, I mean, if you're gonna drop the mic and exit, those are 2 good interviews to do it on. But it's still there and all the rest of the stuff that you created. So go ahead and
so you can find that. It's called Just Another Card Show. The first 10 episodes or so are me opening boxes with a buddy, and we're just like drinking beer and opening cards and having a good time. And I did those 2 interviews. They're the last 2 interviews on there. So you can go check them out. Maybe one day we'll fire it back up, but, and then you can find me, my name is JB, and, I'm at OldTownCards on Twitter. I keep it very narrow, so I'm nowhere else. You're not gonna find me on Instagram. You're not gonna find me anywhere else, just on Twitter. Love to interact with the community. Anyone who ever DMs me, tags me, whatever, try to do my best to talk to anyone who wants to talk. And, I think that's what this hobby's all about.
Yep. And like I said, when we kind of led off the conversation tonight, you keep it real. I appreciate that. We need more real type people, and keep that up. And you're great. If you're not following JB on Twitter, shame on you. Correct that. Gives you the straight scoop, gives you his honest opinion, and I appreciate that. I try to do the same thing. So keep it up, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Hey everybody, have you heard about Collectible? It's the one-stop shop where any collector can buy and trade affordable shares in some of the most rare and valuable sports cards and memorabilia in the world, starting from just $5. From 1952 Mickey Mantle PSA 10s and Wilt Chamberlain's iconic rookie uniform to one-of-one Patrick Mahomes RPAs, rare LeBron James logo mans, and everything in between, Collectible is creating never-before-seen access and opportunities for all. Let's grow the hobby we love together. Please note this is not a recommendation or solicitation to buy any security. All investment decisions should be undertaken after doing your own research.
that's going to do it for this episode of Sports Card Nation. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed the conversation with JB, Old Town Cards. We hit a lot of topics, including the baseball lockout, which is, going to now cut the regular season short. That sucks. Pardon my French, but no to put it. And whose chin gets hit? The fans, right? We always take it on the chin, and this sport just doesn't learn from prior history. Just doesn't learn. We call it America's pastime, right? Let's be honest. I think most people will agree. It really isn't anymore. It's still a popular sport. Still got a long and great history. But America's pastime is football. When you think about the Super Bowl and fantasy sports and betting and halftime show and people who watch the Super Bowl who aren't even football fans, whether it be for the commercials or just for the pageantry of the game or the halftime show itself. I mean, very few people don't watch the Super Bowl, right? Not everyone watches the World Series. And, baseball's got to keep or stop shooting itself in the foot. So hopefully we get some baseball back soon. I've said Rob Manfred's the worst commissioner maybe in the history of sports. He's a local guy here from Rome, New York, but I'm not giving him any passes just because he's a local guy. He's terrible. He's been sort of terrible since he came in, and I never thought I'd say this, but I miss Bud Selig. I'm a fan of his either. But hopefully these two sides get to the table and get this deal done finally. So we'll keep I want to thank JB for coming on, a great guest, and had a great time talking to him. We'll have him back on at a later time as well. So we hope everyone's doing well, and we'll see you next week.